Hello everyone. Thanks for coming. It's always nice. Thought it could be empty, which is a pleasant surprise.
Hi, so good morning everyone. I'm Alex, the CTO of Ascent. So for those of you that don't know, Ascent is a data and software company, about 500 people, and about 400 of those are engineers. So we're very much an engineering company. So we work with customers like Brewdog, doing data strategy, digital strategy, and then implementation. That's our background. And cool. I have today Tom with me from Brewdog.
I'm the digital director of Brewdog. Who has heard of Brewdog? Anyone? It's a good start, brilliant. So we're a beer company, so it's kind of strange that we're at a data conference, but we're a beer company. We're at 15 years old. We still feel very much like a startup, but we're at 15 years old. You might not know that we've got 4 breweries. We're international, so we have franchises in China, in India, in Japan. I think one of the points of difference, which is interesting for this conversation about Brewdog, is we have kind of 3 core pillars, which is beer, people, planet. And those things are really very important to us. And I'll talk a little bit about the middle one, the people side. So Brewdog is crowd-funded by 200,000 people. So that is one of the kind of things that differentiates us. We really have a beer company with a community at its heart. And equally, we're also now employee-owned as well, so we do a share scheme for our employees, so people is very much at the heart of it. And then the sustainability part, so we take this very seriously. So not only do we spend a lot of money taking carbon out of the production process, but we also bought a massive forest in the Highlands in order to sequester as much carbon as possible as well. So this, I'm not just telling you about Brewdog, that will become pertinent later.
Great. So our talk today is going to be about...
Oh, sorry. We should say, we're also going to bribe you with beer. Yeah. Alex has got beer at his stand. What's your stand?
Our stand is 644.
644.
So yeah, I don't know how appealing that is at 10:30 in the morning, but we are there all day. So it might be more appealing later in the day. So swing by 644. Okay, so we're going to do quite an informal session today rather than just a presentation. We're just going to have a bit of a discussion around Brewdog's North Star and kind of the journey we've gone on. So please do just put your hand up as we go, and we've got a microphone, so if you have questions as we're talking, we'll try and just answer them as we go rather than just packing a 5-minute into the end. So, you know, just listen to what we're saying and ask questions. That would be really great. So to start off with, before we kind of jump into the discussion, I just want to kind of give the room a bit of an intro to what a North Star is, or what we think a North Star is, because without that, I think you'll be missing a bit of context. So it's a way to kind of focus employees and strategy, and that's a really boring textbook definition, which doesn't mean much. So I always like to think about a North Star in 2 different ways. One of them is straight from a title of a book called Does It Make the Boat Go Faster? Maybe some of you will have read it, but it's essentially a book about a coach and a rowing team. And you know, the rowing team was underperforming, and he came in with this mentality of asking one question: does it make the boat go faster? And he looked at every single part of the athletes' lives, you know, right down to the socks they were wearing, what time they got up in the morning, what they ate for breakfast, the type of music they listened to before they trained, you know, all kinds of factors, just asking one single question, which is, does it make the boat go faster? And in a way, that's a North Star. That's what we would call a North Star. It's one question that you can keep coming back to. And the other way that I like to kind of think about a North Star in more practical terms, in kind of data and engineering, is always asking engineers kind of, why was this feature prioritized? And often what you'll find is they say, oh, well, because the product owner prioritized it, or because it's what the customer asked for. And that's not really answering why, that's kind of how. That's how it got prioritized, not why it got prioritized. So a North Star helps you give a reason for why you're doing the day-to-day tasks you're doing. It gives a kind of driving need to the business. So with that background set, the kind of first question to pose to Tom and about Brewdog is kind of where did the need for a North Star arise in Brewdog? When did you, as a business, think, we need to start thinking about this kind of high-level strategy to drive our kind of digital outcomes?
I suppose kind of the framing point is that if you're a technologist, that everything looks like a technology problem, right? When invariably it's a people problem. And so when we started working together, we started working on a nice kind of self-contained project, which was to do the next crowdfunding raise. It was really successful, it was great, but it was all run within my team. And so I kind of had full ownership of that process, and it was kind of easy to get done in a way. As soon as we looked at the opportunity for Brewdog, which is very much omni-channel, it's kind of an unusual business where we sell to grocers, we sell direct through our bars, we sell direct through online shop and everything. So actually the big opportunity is connecting the dots between all of that. And as soon as you go into that problem, then you start to meet all the different silos of the business that go, actually, I'm very happy over here just doing what I want to do. This is my P&L. Why should I be working with you on this? And so then we needed something to galvanize everyone and kind of find a common ground that go, if we all go for this thing, then we can work together. And I think that was the need of it. So I think, to be blunt, I was bumping up against a lot of problems, right? Trying to convince people to do things, and this was a technique to overcome them.
Yeah, when we started looking at bigger problems, so I think one of the areas thinking about data especially was when we started talking about single customer view. So Brewdog has hundreds of bars, some of them are franchised, some of them are owned. The amount of data from different sales channels and different devices and different sources was huge. And from a technical point of view, it's quite easy to just start looking at architectural diagrams and saying, well, this is how we piece all these together. But as soon as you start trying to implement it, you realize that you start going into bars and asking them to do things differently with point of sale systems. They don't really care because they don't know why. There's no kind of driving force behind that. Exactly. So creating a North Star was sort of a method to pull people together to solve a technology problem in quite complicated environments.
Absolutely, and I'll just add one thing. It really helps if you've got the board on board as well. So this was a process that we were working with the individual teams, but culminated with a presentation to the board to say, do we all agree that we're going for this? And then as soon as they say yes, everyone sort of kind of follows suit. So that's an important step in the process.
Yeah. So the big question really, kind of, what is the North Star at Brewdog? I mean, how did we, it's all very well talking about an abstract, but what actually then is the North Star in Brewdog? How has Brewdog created a North Star, and how's that kind of helping?
So, this comes back to what I was saying before, the beer, people, planet thing. We're looking at what is different about us versus another brewery or another hospitality company or whatever. What really makes us stand out? So we worked really closely with all of the different teams, from retail, from marketing, from customer marketing, for grocery, for international teams, and just kind of looked very carefully about what are those real differentiators and what we're trying to achieve here, what are the outcomes that we're trying to look at. So I can perhaps talk you through it. So connected by beer. So when we talk about it internally, we talk about building Brewdog neighborhoods. So we want to connect the people with the places they work, live and play through their love of beer, right? So we're about communities. So when I talk a little bit earlier about communities, that's absolutely unique to us. So how do we build those communities, and where do communities span from? How do they grow? And and from pure data terms, that location centricity is like, where do they shop? They shop in their local shop. Where do they go to the bar? They go to their local bar. How do I make sure they get the right delivery experience through the online shop, because they want to choose their local courier, whether it's Yodel or DPD or whoever. So this was something that we could all kind of get behind. So it made sense for retail, it made sense for the grocery customers, it made sense for e-com. And then there was 3 themes in the midst of all of this, which you can see that they relate to that idea of beer, people, planet quite straightforwardly. And I think the first one is really important. So we can see that when people apply data, apply contextualization, apply personalization, it can actually remove the personal, and that is not what we're trying to achieve. So we're trying to put data and insight into the hands of humans who can then make that experience better.
We talked quite a lot about that when we were working on the North Star, which is almost the anti-Amazonification of experience, where, data's been used so much in the context of driving optimization and streamlining customer experience that so many businesses have actually almost stepped away from putting customers at the center of their experience, because when they talk about customer experience, what they're actually meaning is optimization, not really improving the connection with the customer. And something that I thought was interesting was the idea of that third space, having a local bar, and when you go to a bar, feeling like you understand, they understand you, and you feel like you're part of a network or community. You don't just feel like you're having your data used in a strange and creepy fashion to be optimized and advertised to.
Absolutely, because when we talk about our bar crew, everyone in Brewdog has to take the certified beer server exam. So we get trained. It's a bit like a sommelier in wine. You get trained. So these people are really knowledgeable, right? So if we give them some information about what this person likes, what their beer preferences are, it's better to give it to someone who really understands beer and just goes, hey, you're back in the bar. You've checked in. You've told me you want me to tell you something about beer. And then they can be armed with the data to go, hey, you like this, this, and this. How about trying a sample of this? So suddenly you kind of got that Cheers-like experience, powered by data, but very, very human. And we're actually looking at that. How do we make the e-commerce experience more human, not more Amazon-like? So that you can see that's where we want that enhanced hospitality. The communities thing, the connected communities things, it's like communities really are only a community unless they talk to each other. So we're really kind of thinking about how do we connect each other. So one of the initiatives we have is a beer visa. So a beer visa is you get a passport and you can go around all of the bars and get a stamp. If you get a certain amount of stamps, you get some rewards. But people organize little groups to go and do this. And bizarrely, in my first week of joining, when they were doing it in an analog fashion, I met the guy who'd done every single bar, and he'd done it in 2 weeks. So that's the kind of community that you really want to grow, right? And then the final perspective is around sustainability. And I should really talk a little bit about how we measure this, because measurement is absolutely vital in this, because it's great once you've won approval for what is kind of a quite abstract kind of North Star in a way, but the real part of it is we're looking at 10 times active community growth, right? And so that is the thing. How do we grow that community through these methods, and how do we track it? So we can track that really, and just to let you know, we're 2x from when we started, so we're on the right path. It's going the right way. So yeah, that's incredibly important. So we actually have some metrics for this. So sustainability is a really hard one to track. It's like we were looking, can we track it based on whether someone knows whether we are sustainable, we do some kind of qualitative analysis, but actually we ended up looking at advocacy. So do people want to refer us? And it tends to be more about those kind of purpose and mission elements that are the reasons why people will do advocacy. So we're measuring that as an outcome.
So one of the kind of points that people often raise when you're doing, workshops or you're proposing something like a North Star is they seem to be a bit skeptical about it. It's seen as maybe a bit of a marketing exercise, or, they kind of ask the question, well, doesn't everyone just want growth? Doesn't everything always just come back to revenue? And I think one of the kind of the easiest ways, or the most interesting ways of actually addressing that, is to just look at companies who actually do have quite strong digital strategies, and then looking at why they have them. So these three businesses, Starbucks, Nike, and Sephora, three large, really strong digital companies. But if you actually look at what their kind of North Stars are, they're really different. So Sephora were in this space where they had these huge flagship stores, in Manhattan, for example, in really prime locations, but they weren't doing very well, and they were being challenged online. So these kind of, online challengers who were undercutting them on price. So they built their entire strategy or North Star around the single idea of competing by driving people back into their stores. It's largely makeup, it's about texture and color and touch. So they realized that they could do things that their competitors couldn't by creating abilities like starting a basket online and then finishing in store, where people actually spent more. So if you look at their North Star is entirely about blending digital and in-store into one pipeline. In stark contrast to that, you have Nike, who actually were finding that they had 3,000 odd third-party suppliers, and they couldn't control their brand. So they actually canned them all, and they realized that by driving people online using Nike ID, they could create much higher margins, they could control the customer experience. So their entire digital strategy in North Star was going the other way. And then Starbucks, who have the digital flywheel they talk about every year, and that they create KPIs and they put them out to the market, and they're much a commodity product, so their entire North Star is about driving customer stickiness. So they want customers to keep coming back to the same Starbucks stores and not go to the watch house, a new competitor brand. They want people to be loyal. So if you kind of think about, if you pose that challenge to, say, data scientists, they start thinking along very different lines. The challenge to make a customer sticky versus the challenge to drive a customer through into a store versus the challenge to get a customer from a store actually online. They're really different challenges. So superficially, you could say that they're all about maximizing revenue, but it shows how actually it really comes down to the type of business you are as to how you structure a North Star, because it becomes the question you ask every time you're having a discussion about features, every time you're having a discussion about what capability to build next. When you even right down to the level of, in a discussion where you're looking at a backlog and you're saying, well, do we prioritize this feature or do we prioritize this feature? You can bring it back to the North Star, which is it going to make the boat go faster? Is this going to drive more people through into our flagship stores or not? Is this going to, and with Brewdog, the North Star is really strong around the idea of community. Is this going to increase community interactions and personalization? It's not about driving more beer sales, it's about making customers feel closer and more integrated into the brand.
I think that's really important on the revenue side. Every business is trying to make money, trying to make profit, right? But unfortunately, telling everyone you want to make money and make profit isn't the way to make more money, right? You've got to think about what your inputs are in order to get there, right? So that's why this isn't a list of our kind of EBITDA goals, right? That's really important. Because and also it has to be about what differentiates you and unites you. On the Starbucks example, I kind of saw it firsthand. One of the hardest things to do in hospitality at scale is to have a very consistent experience where all of the crew and the team members kind of deliver the experience that you want. And I was standing behind someone in the queue at Starbucks, and they were ordering a drink, and the barista said to them, he's like, why don't you get the app? And I was like, this is like kind of like how did you train this man to say this? And so I kind of went up to him and said, so is there some kind of program, some kind of training that you get to say this? He goes, oh no, I just know that I see all the people that come back into my shop are the ones that use the app. Right, so he's like absolutely 100% motivated to get people onto that platform, and that's the power of kind of getting this right.
So the next kind of question I want for you, Tom, is just, to kind of make it a bit real, like the North Star is this sort of ethereal thing which, you put out in front of the business and publish out to the world, but, how has that actually impacted Brewdog day to day in the last kind of year? What kind of projects has it driven, and what's the outcomes of those projects been?
Well, I think what is at the heart of it, we've got a kind of working group that works together from all the leaders in the different parts of the business who talk about these things regularly. It's really, really helpful, and equally as on the board, I said. But what we've delivered, so we've done one of the hard things. We've created a data platform that runs across the whole estates. Which is no mean feat. We till system, payment systems, e-commerce businesses, different WMS systems, all of that kind of thing. And what that has allowed us to do is to start performing some proper data science in doing some predictive works and marketing automation and that kind of thing. So I will, it's more than that actually, because on top of that data platform, we have self-serve analytics, so we're bringing down the cost of ownership. One of the data scientists, I'm sure a few of you in the room, you're expensive people, right? I don't want someone asking you to create an email list, right? And so doing simple things like that really quickly is good. BI reporting, automations, taking all of that kind of painstaking work out of the equation and automating it, and also just for your own credibility, having a really strong view of all of the KPIs that matter. A glance for all of your stakeholders really makes you look in control, which is really important when you're asking for money to do this kind of thing.
One thing I thought was interesting when you said about implementing a data platform. We work with a lot of different customers who are implementing data platforms, and often it's kind of a project that's driven by a data working group, for example, and it's very abstract, and it's kind of, we're building a data platform and we're going to create a common data model, and you do a couple of workshops with a couple of other departments, and then a year later this sort of data platform appears and nobody knows how to use it or what it's for. But we kind of went about it a bit differently with Brewdog, which was using the North Star to look at what the main thing we needed to do to create a real connection with customers, and realized quickly that was a kind of single customer view. Yeah. So in kind of implementing the data platform, we put that right at the center. It's a really good way of engaging with different departments. So marketing instantly have a really clear view of why the data platform's being built, or you can go to a bar, and even down to a member of bar staff will understand intuitively what they're going to get out of that. And I think that made the whole process of actually designing and implementing at least the first iteration of a data platform so much easier.
Totally. And in terms of like persuasion, for example, immediately we could see that logged in account users spent like 10-15% more. So then I'm going to go to the retail director and say, can you please drive more logins, right? And he's like, oh no, I just want to use this off the shelf thing that's really quick to do. So well, actually, if we take the pain to do this properly, you're going to make more money, and I can prove it in the dashboard. So it's that kind of view that really helps.
And just tell us a little bit about Next Best Beer, because I always think, we've got a question I'll take in a moment as well. Just tell us a little bit about Next Best Beer, because I think Next Best Beer is quite a fun, interesting project, but it had some really, meaningful outcomes.
Yes. Is there the actual data on that point? But so one of the things that we do in Brewdog is kind of make fun and interesting beers. So we actually have quite a wide range. If you think about most beer companies, it's quite a slim range, a single lager or whatever. And we have quite a range, which kind of presents a problem sometimes of going, which one should I present to this customer and they're going to drink, right? So we created a lot of customer segmentation. Well, actually, we came up with a load of hypotheses about who we thought would drink this kind of beer. Then we set up an ML model and found out we were entirely wrong. And that worked very well and actually drove all of our stats, just improved. And this is against our own view of the world and some of the off-the-shelf AI that's happening in some of the CRM platforms, so that our data model is immediately more effective.
And Next Best Beer is kind of leading now to the Next Best Action, which I think is, again, really interesting in Brewdog, because you have one of the most disparate customer bases I think we've ever worked with. You have students going into bars to get just drunk, basically, versus, people, coming from conferences, two colleagues going and just having 2 beers in a corner. And actually the way you interact with those groups, on the surface, you would think it's similar, but it's completely different. And the way you want to talk to those people is completely different as well.
And down to like what time of day it is in the bar, right? After work crowd's probably going to buy a pint of lager and some chips versus someone who's really serious about beer and wants to sample all the new guest beers on the tap. So it's and what next best action is so vital to the omni-channel view of the world, because if you're thinking about how do I negotiate different actions between all of these different channels, it's like, should I send this person to our own online shop, or am I going to get a better result if I get them to take an offer in Tesco's, which is quite a big decision really when you're thinking that is a different someone else's estate, or should I be promoting a bar opening to this person? So if we can model that properly, then the effect for the whole group is enormous.
Yeah, and we had a question from the audience just here, if we could get a microphone.
Hello.
Hi.
I'm not used to a microphone, so this is very odd. But my question was around the North Star and the fact that you're concentrating on the people and the customer. Get that. But from everything you're kind of saying, the North Star has helped you to improve the workplace for your people. Like, for example, your single platform. But how has it improved it from a customer perspective? What if I went into your bar, how would I see the impact of the North Star, if that makes sense?
Yep. So one of the tools that we built is an ordering app. So that is one of the areas that you would see it. There's one of the bits of glue between all of this is a loyalty program. So that, obviously, it's one of those things that makes sense across all of these channels and allows us to incentivize and drive different behaviors, whether it's like, if to so-and-so customer, if you go and do X and buy this from a certain shop, then you'll get a reward for it. So for example, one of the big activations that we did this year was called Access All Areas, which was prizes and competitions across the whole estate. We're just opening a bar in Vegas, we've just opened Waterloo, and so there's kind of lots of different cross-channel incentives. So that's the place you can see it. You see it from a more personalized experience for the customer.
Yeah, one of the interesting things that the engineering team is looking at the moment is the customized beer flights. So as Tom mentioned at the start, there's 200,000 Brewdog shareholders. There's a huge amount of active Brewdog members with accounts. When you use the app, loads of people. So if you go into a bar and you use the app, we can use Next Best Beer to basically customize small beer flights for you. So it's like a freebie, from the bar staff. The bar staff gets the option to say, hey, this customer, might want these beers in a flight because we think these are probably the beers they're going to like the most, because there's a huge number of beers on tap, especially at the big Vegas and Waterloo bars. There's an endless row of taps. So
we talked a lot about, I don't know if anyone's been in Waterstones recently. You go in there and there's one corner of it where people have written, the staff there have written little cards about the books that they like. So that Waterstones feels quite personal. And that's what we wanted to hand over to the bar staff, to allow them to take the interests of the consumer, but personalize it based on their expertise and what they know about their bar. So we wanted to add that kind of level of hospitality to the experience.
And then just in our last couple of minutes, Tom, sort of, if people are thinking about, tackling the idea of a North Star, thinking that maybe it's something that is useful for them in their business, like what would be just the headline advice you would give them, having gone through the process for the last year?
Yeah, this sounds like a lot of work, but it's the other way around, right? So I tried the other way, just trying to build it and there will come, right? Try and build a beautiful bit of technology, get it out there, find out no one's using it, no one wants it, and someone's gone off and bought another system over here, right? And so, that it's actually longer to do it the hard way. So putting the hard yards in and doing the kind of people work and really doing that kind of the influencing job pays off in the long run. So you can achieve, especially if what you're taking on is massively ambitious, then I think this is the way to do it.
Yeah, and I think from my perspective, it's making it not just about data and tech, and actually just bringing the whole business along with you. So starting from day one by including all the different sides of your business, and just making sure that you bring them along on the journey with you. Anyway, that's all we have time for. So hopefully that was interesting, and please do just come and ask us any questions or just chat to us a little bit more about the experiences. We're on stand 644.
With beer.
With Brewdog beer, yeah. So
Cool.
thank you.
Thank you very much.